Something hard jabbed into Masai's side. Sharp pain hummed through his skin, and he opened his eyes wide. A sea of drowsiness floated all around him, and the sides of his head throbbed.
Ow!
A desert cyclone spun behind his eyes. A raspy voice said,
I've seen it 1,000,000 times, and it always amuses me. That headache you're feeling, it's our very own official welcome, straight from the goddess herself.
Masai glanced up to the speaker. A man dressed in black cleric robes stood over him. Much of the man's exact features were bathed in dim light, but Masai still saw enough to get a good impression of the man. His vibrant green eyes and bushy eyebrows stood out in the flickering candlelight. The man carried a wooden staff.
Who are you?
The man reached down and grabbed him by the arm.
Here, let me help you up. It'll get worse at first, but once you're on your feet, the disorientation will pass.
It took some effort, but Masai managed to stand. His stomach crawled up through his throat, but his force of will kept it at the back of his throat. It only worked for a moment, and then he lurched over. A river of vomit cascaded past his teeth and splattered on the floor. The cleric stepped out of the way, but placed a hand on Masai's back.
It's okay. Let it out. As soon as you're able, stand up and stay upright. Trust me, it'll make the whole process quicker.
Masai retched again before he managed to rise. The older man held him up and gave him a fatherly pat on the back. His smooth, shiny head almost glistened in the poor light.
Who are you? I appreciate your kindness.
The older man smiled.
Don't worry about it. I was where you were long ago, and someone took advantage of my weakened state to ridicule me. I promised myself I wouldn't be so cruel when it was my turn to help someone along the process. My name's Sotek Orines, and I am your trainer.
Masai's head stopped swirling, and the volcano in his stomach subsided. He let out a relieved sigh.
See, what did I tell you? You're getting better already. 1 lesson down, at least 7 more to go.
7 more?
Masai turned to regard him.
I have 8 things to learn? What are they? Can you give me some hints?
I said at least 7. You'll learn at least 7 things from me. You should never stop learning, though.
Sotek scratched his chin.
So you want some hints, hmm? To be honest, I was going to tell you what those things were, but your way sounds much more fun.
Actually, I wouldn't mind being told what they are.
The cleric shook his head.
No. You mentioned hints. I like the idea of making your mind work for it. Here are my hints. Power, preserve, rot, process, covering, barriers, communication, and divinity. So what do you think of my hints?
They're great. So I suppose we start off with power, right?
Sotek started walking out of the room.
Yes, but let's get some breakfast first. We can't do a proper lesson on an empty stomach. And I know a great place a couple blocks from the temple. We can talk there.
When Sotek walked, he placed a great deal of weight on the staff. His body shifted to the right leg ever so slightly. Due to this, his pace was more relaxed and calm.
I'm sure you have questions. Go ahead. Ask. I won't give you any more insights into the hints, but if you're curious about something, I'll answer it for you.
That sounds fair. How long have you been a cleric?
For a moment, Sotek's eyes glazed over. A small smile appeared on the older man's face. When they started climbing an ascending staircase, he said,
Oh, I'd say I've been doing the whole ostracized funeral weirdo gig for about 22 years now. Time flies, doesn't it? I've seen 3 pharaohs on the throne since I sipped the crazy juice. You know the one I'm talking about.
He gave Masai a wink.
Are we really ostracized that much?
Masai frowned and let his attention drift away to the side.
I know my family didn't like Anakanti, but I didn't realize we were social pariahs.
Do you regret going through the trial?
A great sternness dripped from Masai's words.
Absolutely not.
Ooh, such passion. That's the kind of stuff our order really needs.
Sotek clicked his staff against the corners of each step before he planted it upon the solid surface.
To answer your question, yes, we are seen as pariahs, and it's not really talked about, but there is an undercurrent of negative opinion regarding the handling of dead bodies.
What's wrong with dead bodies? I could understand no one wanting to handle a rotting, putrid corpse, but there's nothing really wrong with dead bodies in general.
Sotek stopped at the top of the stairs.
It's that very sentiment that led you here today. Bonus lesson. Most people don't like handling bodies after a person has died. They see it as something beneath them. Damn them for their arrogance. To others, they get hung up on the fact that where there was once life, the body is now empty. And then there are those who see dead bodies as breeding grounds for disease. Granted they are, but not right away they're not.
What about the clerics of Tsara? They're the doctors and healers. Surely they don't harbor the same opinions.
Sotek beamed a wily stare at Masai before he barked out a laugh.
The snakes are the worst of them all.
The older cleric shook his head for a moment and then stared off into the distance.
For all the shouting they do about their medicines and poisons, they refuse to even touch a body once a person's died. I can't tell you how often those damned high and mighty potion peddlers contact our clerics for body retrieval.
My sister's thinking about pledging to the Temple of Tsara.
Well then, she'll have a close connection to rely on when her patients keel over. How very fortunate for her.
Sotek gestured with his staff.
Come, I'm hungry.
Masai followed him through the interior of the temple. Other clerics moved about, going from room to room, clearly already busy with their daily tasks. Unlike yesterday, the clerics who noticed Masai actually smiled at him. Few waved or gave him more pleasantries than that, but that was probably because most of them appeared busy. When Masai and Sotek emerged, the brightness of the sun glimmered in his eyes. A blanket of warmth stretched across his face, and although he was blinded, ecstasy rippled through his senses. Everyday citizens of Ijikos were already on the streets, and they hustled and bustled, just as they did every other day. Was it his imagination, or were the people especially vigorous today? They moved with so much energy, and it was slightly hypnotizing to see. However, despite the beauty of the day and the greatness of the people, Ijikos lacked one thing. A sudden soreness found its way on Masai's face, and the radiance he once marveled over muted ever so subtly.
Oh, I've seen that expression before. What's their name?
I beg your pardon?
You have that glimmer in your eyes, the devotion of the heart. What's their name?
With all due respect, I'd rather keep her name to myself. I hope that doesn't offend you.
To Masai's delight, Sotek let out a chortle.
Makes no difference to me. Here's another bonus lesson for you. But first, a question. Does she know how you feel about her?
I would think so. We shared a kiss, and she claimed my soul as her own property. It's funny, but that makes me really happy.
She sounds like an interesting person. And now the lesson. This gig is wonderful, but don't let it get in the way of fostering and nurturing love. Life isn't quite as wonderful if you don't have someone to share it with.
Masai raised an eyebrow at him.
Is that from personal experience?
Ha! Are you kidding? I have 3 people to share my life with. But that's neither here nor there.
Sotek pointed to a little building at the corner.
There she is. The best damned breakfast spot in all of Enonoch.
The building that Sotek pointed to was a 1-story mud brick and stone structure with a flat roof. Large cracks scaled up the sides of the building like an army of invading snakes. The windows didn't even have shutters. The people who walked the streets went out of their way to avoid the doorway to the place. It even lacked a sign to distinguish its name.
Are you sure about this place? I've never noticed it before, nor have I heard of it. What's it called?
Sotek smiled at him. A palpable sense of madness lay embedded within the curvature of the mouth.
It's called the Jackal Tit.
Much as the name suggested, the Jackal Tit had an Enonoch cleric-focused based clientele. Darknesses and musty fragrances filled the interior. Booths lined the walls, and the restaurant employees positioned dark wooden tables and chairs across the floor. Over a dozen clerics engaged in conversations sat in booths and tables. Sotek spotted an open booth toward the back. As soon as they sat in a booth, Sotek reached into his robes and pulled out a small pouch. Elaborate glass hookahs rested on every table, but some of the smoking aids lay dormant. Some of the clerics enjoying the hookahs sent out streams of pleasant-smelling smoke into the air. Masai's heart beat at a more relaxed rate, and a sense of calmness fell over him. Other devotees to the great and wondrous Enonoch laughed and joked with one another. Beyond these walls, the clerics of Enonoch usually appeared sour and unapproachable. As soon as they were hidden from the eyes of those who didn't understand them, the clerics were allowed to be themselves. They were uninhibited and unjudged. A new sense of excitement danced in Masai's soul. These were his people. Sotek grabbed the hookah and emptied the small pouch into the loading chamber. He gestured one of the pipes to Masai.
Do you smoke? And do you mind if I smoke while we eat?
No. And no, I don't mind.
Masai inspected the interior.
This place is so great.
You bet it is.
Sotek took a long hit from the pipe. He exhaled, and a stream of smoke fluttered before him. He grinned.
You have to be of the order to get in, so we can talk about our secrets without a lot of concern. Normally, you wouldn't be able to get in, but you're with me. Once you become a full cleric, you can come here as much as you want.
A young woman waltzed over to him and took their food orders. Sotek ordered hare and eggs and sausage, while Masai ordered grilled fish and wheatmeal. As she walked away, Masai leaned over to Sotek.
Are the servers and cooks clerics too?
Yep, they earn extra money working down here, which is great because business is always booming.
Sotek blew out a hookah ring.
Now, let's talk about that first hint. Power. What do you think it means?
Masai scrunched up his nose for a moment and then locked eyes with his trainer.
You're talking about mana, right?
Right. Later today, we'll actually use mana. But for the moment, we'll talk about what mana is.
Sotek leaned in really close.
Mana is the spiritual energy we use to cast our spells. Our empowered souls bleed off mana. Do you remember when great Anakanti touched your forehead and fed her energy into your third eye?
Masai blushed.
Yes.
Sotek chuckled.
I probably blushed too. After all, to be touched by the goddess herself is highly intimate. Anyway, when she touched you, she created a mana well within you. Do you remember that potion you drank when you came out of the trance? You drank it to start the process of filling your empty mana well. It started a chemical reaction within you that gave you the ability to naturally store and create your own mana. Usually it takes a day for a person to replenish their mana well. You took 3 days.
Masai frowned.
Wait, what do you mean 3 days? I was really out for that long?
Sotek's glee faded.
Doja told us you drank the potion longer than anyone else had, ever. That only means one thing.
Masai swallowed hard, but the lump at the back of his throat refused to go down.
What does that mean? Is it bad?
The older man shook his head.
It's not bad. It means that you have a very large mana well. I wonder why that is. What happened to you in the land of the dead?
What was he supposed to say? The goddess kissed him? Masai hadn't realized he had been sitting there in deep thought for as long as he did. Sotek roused him from his thoughts with a chuckle.
Your secrets intrigue me, my young friend. I'll figure them out sooner or later, perhaps. Let's move on.
Sotek sat back in his booth and relaxed.
Here's an easy question. What element are we linked with the most?
Masai frowned, for the question had incredible complexity. Anaconti didn't represent any of the 5 primary elements. In his mind, Masai ran down the list of deities and their elements.
Arcos the falcon is fire, Tsara the snake is earth, Chota the baboon is wood, Baha the cat is metal, Sotar the crocodile is water. What does Anaconti associate with?
He thought about the funerals, the afterlife, and the judgment. The images of Anaconti always depicted her with the great Ankh staff, standing in the land of the dead. She interacted with the dead souls.
I suppose the answer is death, but death isn't an element.
Several of the other clerics peered over at him and gave him amused, chiding looks. Compared to their vast experiences, perhaps he did deserve their disapproval.
You don't think so?
Even Sotek's face captured that glimmer of maturity and knowledge.
The elements all have an effect on our lives as mortals, in some form or fashion. Can't the same be said of death? Death touches everything in some capacity. Why is it that death is lower than fire or water? It is no less primal than any of the other 5, and I can almost guarantee more people fear death than any of the other elements combined.
So death is the unofficial element.
It depends on who you ask. If you ask one of the servants of the primary 5, then no, death is not an element. If you ask a true believer of Anaconti, it is the most important element. With all that in mind, mana is tied to your element. Your mana and your magic are connected to death energy.
Sotek stopped speaking once their food arrived. Masai's grilled fish smelled amazing and had little vegetables beside it. A wooden bowl contained his wheat meal. Sotek ate 5 hard-fried herring eggs, several thick links of sausage, and a large buttered muffin. The food tasted better than anything Masai had ever eaten. With his food devoured, he sat back and speculated at Sotek.
I know you're not finished yet, but can I ask you a question?
Sotek popped a little link of sausage into his mouth.
I should hope so. Otherwise, why am I here? Fire away!
Bits of sausage flew out of his mouth.
How does our magic work exactly? I understand how it's powered now, but in terms of doing it, how do we perform the spells?
Sotek wiped his mouth with his napkin and then swallowed. The crassness had passed, and he spoke with clarity and articulation.
That is a good question. Magic works through imagination. You have to imagine what you're doing before you actually do it. While imagining a spell, we have to mentally pull from our own mana wells. There is one caveat to the concept.
And what is that?
Though we have to rely on our imagination to cast our spells, we don't have unlimited control on the elements we're infused with. Only the gods and goddesses can create new spells, since they have the ability to write and rewrite the laws of reality. Don't fret though, there is still much we can do within our own element. You'll learn the basics this week.
I can't wait.
Masai and Sotek left the jackal tent and returned to the temple. Rather than go to the basement floor, Sotek led Masai to the 3rd floor of the temple. One of the rooms had a beautiful balcony with carefully carved columns that held up the ceiling. Several oak tables waited on the balcony, and dead bodies covered the tables. At 2 of the other tables, 2 pairs of people worked with magic. Judging from their clothes, it was 2 new clerics and 2 trainers working on the bodies. The new clerics closed their eyes and their hands glowed with ominous obsidian-colored energy.
Watch closely.
The new clerics touched the bodies they worked with, and suddenly the bodies rotted. The skin peeled away and decayed. Bones appeared and became more apparent. A terrible stench wafted on the air. Masai turned his nose away in disgust, but the other clerics seemed unfazed by the aroma. A moment later, the cleric's hands glowed again, and they touched the rotting corpses. The rot reversed, Skin reformed over the bones, and the stench dissipated.
Preserve and rot? So those are the next lessons, aren't they?
Sotek nodded.
As clerics of Anakanti, we're given the duty and privilege to prepare the bodies of the dead for the afterlife. Sometimes the bodies we get are in terrible condition. We can't repair wounds on the body, but we can reverse any necrosis that happens so the bodies we embalm are fresh.
Why do we have the ability to rot corpses? What purpose does that serve?
Sotek's mouth formed a small line under his nose, and his grip on his staff tightened.
The answer can be summed up in one word: defense.
Defense?
Masai observed the bodies and watched the clerics preserve and rot the bodies again.
The rot ability? They're merely practicing it on the bodies. It's for living people, isn't it?
Living people, living animals, living plants. It's our way of ensuring we aren't harassed by any of those who don't understand us. After a while of practicing, you'll learn how to channel your magic through your staff. That's when you really become dangerous.
Sotek approached an empty table.
I'm going to show you how to do it several times before I let you try.
Masai stood beside Sotek and waited. The older cleric held up his hand, and an instant later, onyx-colored energy outlined his fingers and palms. It almost resembled fire made from shadows. Sotek touched the body, and a ring of rot grew from where Sotek had touched. He touched the body again, and the rot washed away like dirt. As soon as the body was whole, Sotek ravaged it again, only to fix it. Each time, Masai paid special attention to how the body reacted during the spell. He imagined himself being able to do this once. Caution enveloped each of Sotek's words.
Whoa! Hold your camels. You're jumping ahead, my young friend.
What do you mean? I'm not doing anything. I'm imagining how this spell's supposed to work. I've not delved into my mana pool yet.
Then why's your hand glowing?
Sotek pointed. Sure enough, Masai's hand glowed with a black light.
It's very easy to dip into your own mana pool, so oftentimes we don't even need to actively think to do it. Whatever you do, don't touch yourself.
A certain degree of pleasure existed in handling death magic. Ripples of pride and pleasure stretched within his nerves, and a strange desire awoke within him. Masai just had to touch something.
I guess it's your turn. Go ahead and touch the corpse. As you do, imagine the rot leaving the body. Peel it back like the skin of a fruit. Then imagine the body whole and fresh.
Masai took a deep breath and then touched the rotting corpse. The smooth bones of the ribs felt bizarre and unique, as he had never touched anything like it. He closed his eyes and imagined the rot flaking off, leaving only new skin behind it. The bones disappeared in the mounds of flesh. New hair sprouted from his scalp, and the eyeballs filled the empty eye sockets. Sotek's voice stirred him from his trance.
Good job. Take a look.
Masai studied the body, which was unblemished by any sign of rot.
Now, imagine the rot spreading all over the skin, the organs shriveling up, and the bones emerging. Be prepared for the smell.
Sotek let out a chuckle.
I know, it smells awful, but you can't back away, and you can't show that it bothers you. If you wanted good smells, you should have pledged to the Temple of Choda.
Once more, Masai closed his eyes and imagined the body fresh and whole. In his mind, he touched it, and the body's skin began to unravel. Bones emerged from the skin like hippos coming up for air. Masai placed his hand on the corpse's arm and let his imagination feed into his mana well. A foul stink caressed the inside of his nose. The urge to turn away tugged at his every fiber, and yet he didn't back down. Instead, he drew in a deep breath through his nose and took in as much of death's perfume as he could. His throat closed a little and even threatened to gag. Masai paused and then drew in more of the scent. Despite the overwhelming plea from his body, Masai refused to allow his body to give in.
You can stop now.
Masai opened his eyes and saw the corpse again. Putrid gray-green flesh covered the table, and cracked bones peeked out through mounds of meat. The scent had diminished.
It's been such a long time since I've seen a young initiate try and battering ram their way through the stink. Most of those who tried threw up on themselves. How do you feel?
Sotek placed a hand on Masai's back. Masai tried to speak, but then he turned to the side. His stomach raged with violence, and the spawn of its revenge sprayed out all over the temple floor. Sotek laughed.
Ha! I knew it. Good try, though.
Masai hurled again, this time more liquid than solid. Sotek crouched beside him and rubbed Masai's back.
Oh, it's all right. Let it out. The good news is that it'll become easier to withstand the more you work around the smell.
Slowly, Masai regained his composure and stood up.
I did real magic. That's so incredible. Where did the other people go?
Oh, they finished up their sessions while you had your eyes closed. You did very well for your first time. For the rest of the day, we're going to practice those spells over and over.
The rest of the day? Until sunset?
A sudden panic ignited within him.
Are we stopping for lunch?
Of course we will. However, I doubt we'll even make it to lunch. Using those spells takes considerable mana.
Masai wiped his mouth of the lingering vomit and turned back to the rotting corpse.
Should I start now?
Sotek gave him a polite hand gesture.
By all means.
And so, Masai preserved, and then rotted the body again. Rather than take deep intakes of the scent, he took little sniffs. He closed his eyes to imagine the spell, but after the 5th rot spell, Sotek told him to keep his eyes open. That made the spells much harder to cast.
I want you to keep casting until your mana well is bone dry. Pay special attention to how you feel when your mana gets low. Go ahead.
The weariness in Masai's chest grew with each spell he cast. His limbs hummed and throbbed as if they were hollowed out. Aches and tension whirled throughout his body every time he moved. Masai's eyes throbbed and his vision blurred. As he let loose another preserve spell, his internal organs jumped within him. An abrupt force of pressure pushed out from his insides. Masai stopped and gazed into nothingness with wide eyes.
Cast one last spell.
Masai imagined the body rotting, like he had done the entire day. This time, his body resisted and convulsed. Pain racked throughout his body. His mind collapsed into mush, and thoughts came in groggy intervals. Sotek stood beside Masai as he hunched over. The older cleric held a purple vial.
Drink this. It will make you feel better.
Masai gave several tired blinks.
What is it?
I call it a mana potion. In dire emergencies, these little babies can ease the pain when clerics draw too much mana and run themselves dry.
Sotek uncorked the vial and handed it to Masai.
They're very hard to make and very rare. The only reason I'm giving you one is because I make them.
Masai tipped his head back and drank. The fluid had a smoky, strong taste that blanketed his tongue like wool. A sudden aftertaste stabbed into the back of his throat, but it wasn't all that unpleasant. Still, it wasn't exactly wonderful either.
Oh, smells and tastes like beer, only worse.
Sotek grinned.
That's because it's worse than beer. It's my own brew. Give it a moment, and your pain will be gone. You might feel a wicked head buzz, though.
Is this alcohol?
Masai beheld the empty vial.
You said it was a mana potion. You lied to me.
Sotek laughed.
It is a mana potion. That's the brand. Sotek's mana potion. Highly concentrated alcoholic beverages with a hint of infused death magic. If anyone who isn't of Anakanti's order drinks one of these bad boys, they'd pass out. You're a part of the order, but you'll still feel very tipsy.
Masai sat beside the table.
Whoa. Why are all the colors so much brighter?
Sotek laughed again.
That would be the hint of infused death magic. When we get back to the Jackal Tit, I'll give you another one. My mana potions are great for pain relief and to get highly intoxicated. But too many, and you'll start to hallucinate.
But what about him?
Masai gestured to the body on the table. Sotek waved the body off.
Oh, he'll be fine until tomorrow. We'll come back and spend another day practicing before we move on to the next step.
Sotek helped Masai up, but Masai stumbled as they walked through the temple.
Tell me, my friend, have you ever been drunk before?
Nope. I never liked beer because of the way it affected my brothers. They drank too much. They're stupid when they're drunk.
Sotek chuckled.
I've changed my mind. No more mana potions for you.
He held Masai up as they moved into the street.
You're getting some greasy food.